Hello everyone, this is Grand Chief Rose here. Today we're been asked to talk about UNDRIP and the difference between UNDRIP and Bill C-15 Indigenous Act, or the Indigenous Act in general that went worldwide. So make it quite clear, they're two different groups, completely. I've done a lot of research and went through this. Best way to describe UNDRIP is pretty much they want to go in, give all the crown land back, and that sounds like good. This sounds good, but here's the catch. Here's the catch. They're wanting to set it up so that way people that are working with UNDRIP that are indigenous cannot farm, cannot log, and cannot uh, mine for a living. So, that being said, no, normally that would be okay, no problem. We get our money from the trust fund, no issue. Wrong. Wrong. Unfortunately. They plan on charging land taxes and cutting everyone off and stealing the trust fund. The only reason that's kept them from doing that is they don't have full control, so they can't. So that's UNDRIP. Pretty much the idea was give all the crown land back, as much farmland, but they're not really giving it back. It's, yeah. And then they're going to throw everyone in towns and cities, and a lot of people would be putting through. The idea is that every year that an indigenous group is successful, they up the taxes more. Up and again and again. Called inflation. Well, they tax the crap out of everyone until you have no choice but to fold. When you fold, they drag all your people in the city and put you in little boxes, and that's pretty much the gist of UNDRIP. Their idea was to kind of do like city states almost. Stupidest thing I've ever heard. I've heard a few different versions, but that's pretty much the one that I know that's been the most common one that I keep hearing. And when I did research, that seems to be what they're trying to do. So now, what is the other side, right? Okay, so the Bill C-15 Indigenous Act. Now, the Indigenous Act was created by the UN. It started off with a few small countries that are not leftist neo-Nazis. Now, you got to remember the UNDRIP is done by the leftists. The right side or neutral is who pushed the Indigenous Act. Now, the Indigenous Act, now, if you read through the top of it, skip that because there is some confusion, and I'll explain why very quickly here. Our enemy will not honor, our government will not honor the Bill C-15 Indigenous Act. This is why I know it's not from them. But let me explain where it started. It started off with two small little countries, then they pushed it around the world, and then when a lot of countries were him and Han, Russia took it, and boom, they put it out there. Now, this is before the whole Russian-Ukrainian war, so Russia did do a lot of good things. Then Scotland, Ireland followed, and a lot of other countries around the world, including the UK, eventually caved in, and it was forced upon a lot of indigenous countries that were mistreating their people still. So, a good example is 7.2 makes it so that way kids can no longer be taken by a third party. So, in other words, if children are actually being abused, it has to be by our own people that have our own child protective services that take them away. And the second one here, 10.1, is most important. Why I know it's not UNDRIP is because First Nations cannot be moved off of their land. That is why it's very important. They can also ask for compensation for what's happened, the lands that's been taken, and stuff like that, or the destruction. 14.1, education. So our education system has pretty much been pushed whatever the province is doing, or territory, state, whatever, right? Now we're allowed to actually teach our people indigenous history, stuff like that. Medicine, we're allowed to bring our indigenous medicine back, natural medicine, which I guarantee you Big Pharma is not going to like that, eh? 23.1 allows for our own economic system, meaning our own currency, to everything, right? Economics is a huge, huge area. It means we can put up factories, we can produce stuff, we can pull a China without the, but anyways, not to say that, but I mean, China went from nothing and being brutally abused by the British too. And people got to remember that, right? Even though they're now a big power, they weren't at one time. And there's also, again, another deal for medicine. We can also have our own media. Then there is 26.1, which allows us to reclaim our heritage lands. Now, heritage lands means that you have to have some form of link and prove that there was indigenous there at one point, which is stupid. The whole crown land is indigenous land. But anyways, then 30.1 states that no military shall be brought onto indigenous lands without our permission. Now, anytime this happened in the past, we were just thrown aside and said, screw you, kind of thing. So then 32.2 is development. We have the right to do our own development in a lot of different things. That's where that kind of conflicts with the whole UNDRIP, right? And then 33.1 allows us to define our own members or citizens or stuff like that. Now, the guy from Indigenous Services in Saskatchewan, head, told me that we weren't able to... the reason why we were rejected by the Indigenous Services was because we weren't allowed to have citizens, but we were allowed to have members. Okay. So I said to him simply, every other nation around the world is allowed to have citizens. Why should we be treated any different? But he still hasn't read the Indigenous Act, and it's been like over a year and some. The guy actually refuses to talk with me now. So this is what I mean. Like, when it's their stuff, by all means, they'd have it done like that. But because it's not in their agenda, they make it as difficult as possible for you. So that is the difference between the Bill of Rights for Indigenous to the U.N.D.R.I.P. So anyways, I hope that helped say the difference. I would really recommend going and doing your research. If you don't have time, just read the video, share, subscribe to Canoe Nation, Grand Chief Rose, and join our Facebook group. Go to our website, canoenation.com, and if you like what you're doing, you're allowed to join. We do have a bit of an application process. We do accept anyone who's born in Canada too. We accept people that aren't as well, but they're not considered members, they're considered guests. So it's a different deal, just to make it quite clear. We don't like the word immigrants or stuff like that. This is to do with the whole thing. But anyway, so my next video I'm going to be doing real soon here, after, is talking about our real democracy that we have with Canoe Nation, how it works. And so that way people understand that if we go with Canoe Nation, it actually is a huge difference in the way the so-called fake democracy rules this government currently. So anyways, please subscribe, share. You know what to do. God bless, and may the Creator be with you.